Hey, everybody. Hope you're all staying safe out there. This week, we had another great conversation. Our guest was Chef Johnny Spero. He is the chef and owner of Reverie Restaurant located in Washington, D.C. And we really enjoyed talking with him. He gave us some insight as to how he got started. He's had some amazing experiences. Johnny has staged at Noma before it became the global phenomenon that it is today. He's worked with Chef John Shields. The guy just has great experience. And he's also very down to earth, super humble. Has really kind of told us how this pandemic has really kind of forced him to rethink and adjust his restaurant, his whole business model. In fact, talk about somebody's dedicated. Johnny even has been delivering some of the meals himself. Can you imagine ordering a hamburger or a delicious duck for two and Johnny brings it to your door? Amazing. Anyway, enjoy the episode. For those of you out there that are not members yet of Rosendale Online, where all these podcasts live, also you can sign up for our YouTube channel. It is Rosendale Collective, where we will also be posting the video version of these podcasts. Thank you all very much. Be safe. Johnny, thank you. We love you. Take care. Well, let me kind of just go around the horn. I'll introduce everybody. And just so you know, from our side, who we got. So Johnny, we have Dustin Salvaggio. I know you guys have met before, but we've done several classes with him. We've done some dinners and events over the years. He's agreed to kind of co-host some of these episodes with us. So he'll have some questions for you. I don't think you've met Christopher Ryloff. He's our corporate chef that works with us, and he's actually based in Miami. Okay. And Johnny, we'll do a intro on you as well whenever we do the podcast. But for everybody watching, Johnny Spero is the chef at Reverie Restaurant. You've got an amazing background. I know you've spent some time in Copenhagen, Spain. You've worked with some huge names, Marguerite's, Chef Jose Andres, Mini Bar. So you've got a hell of a resume. I watched you on the Netflix show. I was rooting for you because I felt like you're like the hometown guy. Yeah, so you did amazing on that. So would love to kind of hear maybe your kind of background as far as like maybe from a culinary standpoint. What's kind of like shaped your food, and obviously you've had to change some of that over the last month. But what's kind of the whole story of how you got to the restaurant?
I guess I always knew that I wanted to, work for myself and be my own chef and kind of create my own vision. And I've had, an amazing opportunity working for some pretty ridiculously talented chefs. Like John Shields is, I would consider.
Yeah, and I even mentioned him too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's like my culinary mentor and my best friend. Like he checks in on me every once in a while and, we stay in touch. But, I grew up in Baltimore County without any real culture. It was steak, potatoes, and crab cakes. Again, nothing wrong with any of that stuff, but I got into kitchens and realized that I really enjoyed it. I got into it for the wrong reason. Like I liked smoking weed and drinking in the in the back of the restaurant. So I got brought in for the wrong reasons, but I stayed for the right ones. I had never really found anything that really just grabbed my attention as much as we weren't doing anything groundbreaking at the time. It was like warm spinach salads and French onion soup. But it was just like the culture of being in the kitchen kind of grabbed me. And I realized that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was, 17, 18 at the time. So I knew I had a lot to kind of grow on. And I'd say the first thing that kind of brought me into this style of dining was actually an episode of Anthony Bourdain when he goes to El Bulli, and it's that hour-long decoding Ferran episode. And I'd always been very artistic, and I didn't, making crab cakes, it didn't seem like there was any kind of creative outlet there, except for maybe doing a little swoosh of your sriracha aioli. But I kind of fell in love with that whole movement and just the idea behind it. And that from then on, I was that's the path I want to go. And I didn't really know what that path was, because it wasn't nowadays where you have Instagram and there's a book every month. It's just you got to kind of chase things down and find the closest source. And that's kind of what brought me to DC. Jose obviously had made a name for himself already by the time I'd start working in kitchens. It's funny, like I didn't actually start working with Jose immediately. Like when I moved to DC, I worked, I had like a list of like the top 10 restaurants in DC. I'm like, I'm going to work my way up and get to number one. And I kind of skipped a couple and went straight to number one, basically this restaurant called Comey with Johnny Moniz. And I worked there for a couple years. Like my last year there, I was the pastry chef because I was like obsessed with Albert Adria at the time. Still am. Him and Jordan Kahn were like two of the biggest influences, like why I thought at one point I wanted to be a pastry chef. Which is like it was like very forward thinking. It seemed like there was like no barriers. Like you could do whatever the fuck you wanted. And I really enjoyed that. But I just always had like this urge. I have ADD. You'll notice from our conversation that I jump all around a lot, but I kind of realized, I just wanted to keep seeing as much as I could. And Comey took me to Copenhagen and came back, and then took me down to Chilhowie. So yeah, from DC to Copenhagen to Chilhowie, Virginia, back to DC to work for Jose, and then to Mugaritz. Like it was a long, weird path to get to where I am now, but I just never felt like I was ready to settle down. And I just, instead of going and, working in San Francisco or New York, like I originally thought, I just figured I'd get in too much trouble in a city like that, and just wanted to see what else was out there, and just kind of took advantage of a lot of these opportunities that kind of arose. So, but yeah, I knew that I wanted my own restaurant, and I actually opened my first restaurant I was 26, closed it when I was 27, which I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for that. But yeah, I wanted, after being in Spain, I was like, I really want to continue what DC's done, like Jose and Eric Ziebold and Jean-Louis Pallion, like all these people that put DC on the map for what it was.
Right.
Like, it's a great city, and it's got a lot of potential to be something cool and unique. And yeah, that brought me to opening a restaurant down in Alleyway in Georgetown, of all places. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that you mentioned pastries. I mean, I do think that a savory chef that has some kind of pastry background or pastry appreciation, I feel like it helps you in the savory kitchen be more creative and methodic in putting your dishes together. But I mean, your food is beautiful, and you can tell that a lot of those chefs that you've worked with in those restaurants, you can see that you've kind of, you've taken that, ran that through a strainer, created your own style, but you can see some of those nuances of that experience. But
Yeah.
Congratulations on all that. I mean, basically your decisions are what have gotten you, to get those kinds of names on your resume. A lot of people, to work for one of those people would be incredible. So amazing. And you really were at Noma before they really became like a whole global phenomenon. Like, how did you even figure that out? Like, how did you pinpoint that place?
I remember I was staging with a friend of mine on a Sunday, and he had the original Noma book.
Yeah.
And he was showing it to me, and it was like, I was just figuring out like what the world's 50 best was. And I was still just trying to figure out what cooking was. And I hadn't really broadened my horizon on like what the rest of the world was doing at that point. And my friend, Tarver, he's a chef. He was at the Ashmean for a while. Now he's at Patamac.
Oh yeah. Tarver King. Yeah.
I used to go there on Sundays on my days off at Comey, because who needs days off? And he was talking about this restaurant, and we were just looking through it. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, this is like food that I've never seen. I don't understand any of it. I'm like, I want to go see the kitchen. So I sent Matt Orlando an email, just kind of straight out. I was like, hey, I'd love to come stage with you. At this point, I'd never been to Europe before. Like, I think I traveled to Mexico once with my family to go to Cancun when I was like 7. So I never traveled internationally by myself, let alone go work in a European kitchen. But this was, I sent him an email right after I left Comey. And I got an email back like a week later, and I didn't expect to hear anything back. I was like, we'll see. It's just like a shot in the dark. I'm sure they have, why would they respond to the kid who's got like no real experience and whatever. And it's like from Washington, DC. But I get an email back a week later. It's like, you can start this date and you can stay this long. And I was
wow.
I'm like, all right. So I guess I'm like going to sell my PlayStation and get a plane ticket and go to Copenhagen. So I was there for like almost 2 months.
Amazing.
And that was like one of the Comey was my first real experience of like a tasting menu only restaurant. And then going to Noma, where it's like you get there at 7 in the morning, and if you're there exactly at 7, like you're late. And it's like lunch, dinner service, and I'd never seen that. Like lunch in DC was, like burgers and fries, and this is like full on tasting menus for people coming in. I was like, holy shit! Like I had no idea this world existed.
Yeah.
Gastronomy, So that was like one of the wildest experiences. And it was things that I'd never seen, techniques that I'd never seen, ingredients that were like familiar, but not really like anything I could really like put back into terms like something that I had back home. Watching like the forager come in with like wood sorrel, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that you could eat all that. Like it's little things that I just kind of took in, and just it was one of the most eye-opening. And I don't think like, obviously like every step that I've taken has built me to go into this, but like that kind of screwed me up in the head for a little bit, because I'm like, where do I go from here? Like, where do I go back to DC where there's nothing like this, or
right.
What do I do? So that was one of the coolest experiences of my life. Like I still keep in contact with a lot of guys from there, like Bo, who's got a Luca in Copenhagen, and Tom Halpin, he had literally started like a month before I got there, and then he ended up being a sous chef, and now he's in Moscow. Like it's shaped like a really cool network more than anything. Like it's just, which is pretty wild. But yeah, that I still think back at that. I'm like, man, that was some crazy shit, just to like pack up everything, go to Copenhagen, and then like I came back like just super lost. I'm like, that was like one of the coolest experiences of my life. Like what do I do with that now? Like,
right. Yeah. Because I mean, it's so radically different from like any other, the way a typical restaurant is ran.
Oh yeah.
And so we're going to get into some of the questions, just kind of like that are more centered now around the whole, pandemic situation that we're going through, but we kind of take a different angle. I mean, we're not talking about like PPP and I mean, obviously there's a lot of podcasts and conversations out there, a lot of reasons for people to be frustrated. But first, of course, we wanted to talk a little bit about your food and background and what kind of shaped you. But as far as like with how this has impacted the industry, I mean, I know when we're having these conversations, I mean, I love talking to people like you last week with Daniel, because I feel like in all of us, we're all trying to sort through like, how do we move past this? Like, what does like, I mean, your business, I mean, your restaurant, and now, I mean, you've kind of pivoted and you've been doing things to kind of try to get through short term. But when you think about really kind of coming back online, one of my first topics is even just kind of like with staffing and your team. How, like, do you think that people that have not specifically obviously for your restaurant, but also just restaurants in general, I mean, you're talking about chefs that like work crazy hours and they're working like crazy, and then now all of a sudden it's like been a month that they're like not working. Like,
that's been like one of my biggest concerns, and things that it kind of scares me a little bit, because I know that as soon as we can open the doors again to our guests, like we have the fire on all cylinders, because people are tired of cooking for themselves. Like they want to go out and like support us and have like these amazing experiences again. And just like, yeah, if you've been like on bed rest for like a month and then you try to like jump back into this, like it's going to be for me and like my team of 2 that's here right now, like Seamus, my sous chef, has probably cooked over like 1,500 burgers at this point. So he's still in good cooking shape, and Ben too, but everyone else is going to be a little, my biggest concern is just like getting that, like them to get out of first gear. I mean, it's been hard. Like they've been able to enjoy the greatest thing is that everyone's been able to enjoy their lives. Like they're spending more time with their partners at home and their family. And for the most part, they've all been like taking care of themselves, which is great. Like, no, we try to keep in contact with a lot of our staff, because they're like our family, right? We're probably like 14 people all day, including myself. So having a group chat with a handful of us on there, like just checking in every once in a while, but it's going to be hard to get them to like turn it on and like jump right back into it, especially like I think mentally more than physically. Like you're going from, a month ago where we were talking about like the death toll in DC and like the importance of wearing masks and gloves and sanitizing, and like people were scared to go to the grocery store. We're like, okay, well now you can come back to the restaurant. Like how do we ensure them that we are, and me as a business owner, as like I'm doing everything I can to make sure that I'm not putting them in a compromising a position where they have to worry about getting sick or doing anything like that. Like some people are like totally fine. We see everybody walk around without masks, go down to the waterfront, hanging out, which is frustrating. But like, what about, our staff that like generally just like wants to stay home to be safe? Like we can't force anybody to come in and do something they don't want to do. But at like a certain point, like we're going to reopen and the world's going to have to reopen. So how do we not even like, it's not manipulating or like convince them that we're doing anything differently, but how do we show them that this is like, we're ready to go. We've taken all the precautions. Like our restaurant is built basically to like function through this when we reopen. Like I'm pretty sure when we come back, like we have to do, it's 50% capacity. So we go from, my restaurant's not that big. Like most of our seating, we have 18 seats around the kitchen. So we lose that. And then we just have our floor seating. So basically we go from like, you know, a restaurant with a bar and a counter to just floor seating. So it's like 28 seats and then a patio. But our tables are already, you know, so far apart from each other. Like it's kind of weird that it's going to be the restaurant that I really wanted it to be after this. Like we're going to do like prefix tasting menus so there's no menu drops. Like the choices aren't like, no one has to actually like hold a menu or like think. They can just pay ahead of time, come eat and leave. And we like kind of have to take away a little bit of that, like that personal touch that you sometimes associate with like a restaurant. But I don't know. It's, we've been talking to our staff and like, I've been sending them like menu ideas and trying to keep them like motivated and ready to go. But it's going to be a rough first couple of weeks, I think, just to like get everybody back and, you know, excited about doing this. Cause I think there's still fear and we should be scared. Like this is not like everyone got the cold. Like it was a pandemic that affected everybody around the world. Like talking to my friends in Spain, Hong Kong, like it's not just something that affected us here. It's everywhere in the world. So how do we convince them that this 2,300 square foot restaurant is like a safe space now when the rest of the world is like still, although like they've changed and reopened a lot of things, but it's, I don't know the best way to do that. So that's what we're trying to figure out now. Like, what do we have to do? Looking at like taking Jose's lead and seeing what they're doing and, you know, the conversations that they're having. It's like, what do we need to do to make sure this is a safe space?
Well, a lot of stuff that you mentioned is really, it almost sounds like you're getting ready to like open a restaurant up again. You know, yeah. I mean, you're like going through the whole process of thinking about what seating is going to be like and staffing. And I mean, and really for a small restaurant, you know, sometimes there may be some advantages where you're kind of like a speedboat, but if you're a large company and you've got several restaurants, yeah. I mean, for all of them, it's going to be hard too. It's like trying to open up, you know, most places don't open up like 5 restaurants at one time. Yeah. You know, they do one at a time. So whether you're a small independent operator or multi-outlet, I mean, this is just like the entire country. Yeah. It's got so many challenges on so many levels.
Yeah. And it's not like it's just me opening up. They're like a hot new restaurant opening up in, you know, October. It's okay. Everybody in the world is coming back online. Like,
right.
That's been like the craziest thing too, like transitioning to a carry-out restaurant. It's like, okay, we can do that. But then what do you do when the entire city is literally doing that too? Like, how do you stand out amongst the crowd? Like if every restaurant is switching and pivoting to the same position that you're going into, and then we're all going to reopen at the same time, like there's only like a certain, like there's a defined population in DC and there's only a small, like, so percentage that's going to be going out. So how does that like, when everyone's ready to go, like how does that disperse? So what does that look like for like cover counts for the first week? Like how do we like, I always plan for the worst and hope for the best, but like there's got to be we got to figure out like what our new break even is for like a restaurant of this. Like it was already a small restaurant and now it's going to be smaller. So how do you survive when there's like adjust to make sure that you're hitting your margins and doing that? Like it's interesting.
So I got a question for you. I was looking at your website, and then I know I want Dustin and Christopher to jump in. I know they'll have some questions as well, but I had a question about I see you're using the Talk delivery app. Yeah. I'm curious as to your thoughts about like how's it working? Is this something that you might keep on afterwards, and your just thoughts about the deliveries in general? So
when we first opened, we were using Talk for our reservation system and our, for everything. And Talk throughout the United States, like especially in Chicago and like bigger cities, it's a little more well known. And DC was still very small. Like there was only a handful of restaurants that had it. But we jumped on board because I love Talk. Like I think it's probably, as far as like reservation systems go, like the fact that I can sit through and like basically do all of it without having to have like a front of the house manager coach me through it. It's super useful. But we wanted to make a change because we just weren't seeing it. Not a lot of people understood what Talk was in DC. So we just didn't, like, we were super busy in the beginning, just like any restaurant. And then we kind of like started teetering off, like, okay, maybe we need to try something that's more familiar with DC. So we switched to Resi. And we've only been with Resi for a little bit, but then as soon as this started happening, Talk actually reached out to me. They're like, hey, we're still going to transition. Like I'm still very, I felt like when I switched, I was like breaking up with like a girlfriend that I didn't.
Yeah.
But we still maintain like a really good relationship, and they reached out and said that they were transitioning because obviously Chicago had transitioned before us, and they were smart. Like they were being proactive rather than reacting to a situation so they could help us out. And we switched. I mean, we went from like Saturday doing like 50% tasting menus to Tuesday doing carry out. So within that day, like we were able to sign up with Talk, build the menu, build the experience. And it changed a little bit in that first week because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. Like we had Postmates, or not Postmates, we were using like Caviar and Uber Eats, and it was a shit show. Like we were here all day cooking food from 12 till 8. And it was intense. But now that we've gotten it down to like, and figured out what system works. I mean, we're talking about continuing with Talk and continuing the to-go service. Like we won't do deliveries anymore because I'm also the delivery driver.
So you're actually literally delivering.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. So it kind of like people, it surprises them because I'll text them and be like, hey, it's Johnny from Reverie. We're on our way to your house, and they'll be like, "Oh shit!" Like you're.
Dude, I'm sorry. Listen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that would be so cool if I like ordered a burger and you showed up with it. I would be like, "Oh yeah, well, this is awesome!"
Like a chef's table at your doorstep.
Yeah, right. That's so cool.
I wear a mask, but I feel like half the people already like there are regulars and stuff like that, so they know me. Unless these baby blue eyes are piercing, so they can see through it. They don't need the mask. But it's like I don't know. Some people just don't. They just think I'm a delivery driver. They're like, yeah, just leave on the porch. They're like, leave. I'm like, oh, okay. But most people, it's been pretty receptive, like of having me come drop it off. I think it also makes them feel a little bit safer. They're like, it's the chef. He's probably washed his hands 300 times. It's crazy. But so I'm doing the deliveries right now. But we'll transition out from that once we get back. But I think we'll continue to do carry out because I think that's going to have to be until everybody feels safe. Like leave. Not everyone's going to want to come to the restaurant and eat, but we still want to give that experience. So like. The menu that we're doing right now, like we change it every once in a while, but we didn't want to transition to like, we made those t-shirts that my brother made for us. And it's like the Reverie Burger Company. Like we're not a burger restaurant. We have a burger on the menu because we all like to eat burgers. Like we use it as a cheese course on our tasting menu. But it's tasty. We're like, well, that's comforting. It's like what people want right now. But we still do like our roast duck. We've added a couple things here and there, but it's, if it makes people comfortable and they're like, yeah, we'll totally do some burgers to carry out. It will help, supplement some of our income when we're first starting back out. Like there's no reason why we shouldn't do that. I mean, I think that's how we're gonna see a lot of restaurants continuing that on. Like, I don't think we're gonna be able to have guests at our bar for the first couple months. And that'll essentially be like our new carry out section. Like while we're, doing 5 to 12 course tasting menus, we'll be smashing burgers like we are now and packing them up to go. And I think it's actually like, we didn't change that much from what we were. That's always kind of been what we've done. Like we don't take ourselves seriously, but we take our food seriously. So if we're smashing burgers that are inspired by Big Mac and giving you, gooey duck with preserved green strawberries at the same time, like, fuck it, who cares? Like it's fun. So it's kind of been, I think the burger is like, it's become like the mascot of Reverie. It's like, it's a lot of work and it's actually probably like one of the more labor intensive dishes that we have on the menu, but it's not meant to be, it's welcoming and doesn't challenge anybody. It's there and it's good. We had this like 80-year-old lady who lives in Georgetown. She came in the first couple of months. She's like, you're like the best drug dealer in Georgetown. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you got me with the $18 burger. She's like, next time I come back, I'm getting that $125 duck. She's like, so it was the nicest drug reference an 80-year-old woman has ever made to so yeah, we'll see. Like we pivoted to this. Like I have like cases of Zapp's potato chips surrounding me right now. But we pivoted to the carry out delivery, and then we'll pivot back to what we were trying to be from the very beginning and still do carry out. I mean, we were barely 18 months when all this happened. My daughter was born 10 days after we opened the restaurant. So to say that I was like a little distracted and maybe not like 100% there is probably pretty accurate. Because I was like, how do I open a restaurant, be a good husband and be a good father at the same time? And I didn't know.
We were just talking whenever you guys disconnected. It's like, that would be so cool. Like whenever you order something, the actual chef, I mean, when you're in a restaurant and the chef goes out to talk to the people in the table, that's really cool. So imagine how is that delivery? I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we have. So right now we're doing like a 3-mile radius, which covers like a good amount of DC, but we'll increase it too. I mean, I will say I actually really enjoy being a delivery driver. 'Cause I mean, I used to be like a little shit and have like Volkswagens I would race around town where I grew up in Baltimore. And now I'm like in my mid-size SUV, throwing like just crushing it through. I think we had like 8 deliveries the other day. And I got back to the restaurant like in 45 minutes. They're like, how the fuck did you do that? I was like, oh, just throw that baby in sport mode. Don't worry about it. But it's like an entirely different thing. Like I'm used to like being in the kitchen and like wearing whites. Like I never wear a hat, but I've worn a hat every single day because my hair looks like garbage. But it's like an entirely different like set of challenges now. It's like, okay, how do I like park illegally without getting my car towed? And run it, like,
yeah.
Well, like on Saturday, it was Saturday. No, it was Friday. My car, well, it broke. So I was parked in front of a bus stop downtown, like to drop off some burgers. And I came back in and my electric parking brake, like it failed. Like it had the actual button corroded. So my parking brake was engaged. So I was stuck on the side of the road. I had like 1 delivery left. I was like, all right, this is probably like what Uber drivers and shit deal with every single day. Like your car breaks down in the middle of the city. You still have fares. Luckily, like I called the other delivery. They're like, they knew it was me. They're like, okay, we understand. Just bring it tomorrow. And I was sitting on the side of the road like a broken down car. I had to take it to the shop, pick it up the next day. I'm like, yeah, like I've never used a car this much living in the city. So it's definitely gotten worked a little bit harder than it probably has for my wife driving my daughter around. So I mean, I deliver. We try to do a hospital drop every week too. So I drove to Baltimore last week to do a drop off at Hopkins. I made it to Baltimore like in probably like 40 minutes, which from DC should normally take you a little over an hour. There was just no traffic. I'm not admitting to like exceeding the speed limit, but it was it's been a different challenge, but also like it's nice to kind of break away from what I was doing every single day, like head down, working 14-hour days to like this is still hard, but it's different. Like it's a different set of challenges for us. So,
I'll tell you what, man, I think that's super. I think it's so cool that you shared that with us, that you're actually out delivering, because I think that is for a lot of people that are out there that are maybe small business owners or working in a restaurant. And it's like, what do you do to get through this? You do what you got to do. I mean, we all, and whatever it takes. And I mean, I think that sets like an incredible example.
Yeah, that's pretty much the chef mantra, though, right?
Yeah, it's like whatever it takes, right? It's like you have to show up at 8:00 in the morning to start doing bread, so you can have it ready for that night. Like it's the same shit again, just like different set of challenges. Like we have to do, it's like we have 340 burgers that we have to cook tomorrow for like 2 hospitals. We're like, okay, what do we do today to get? It's like we're just changing our mise en place list and like our operations, but it's like it's the same mentality. It's like you just gotta like dig in deep and just go, like head down and work. So that means like we have to do 300 burgers tomorrow, and then that night I had to drive to Baltimore again to drop off some more burgers. So like how do we scheduling our mise en place, making sure my gas is filled so I don't have to like stop and get gas on the way there. Like it's little things like that, but it's like I don't know, it's like the same ideals and standards that we have in the working in the kitchen. It's just a different direction. Same approach, like same end result. Like we're still serving food and serving guests. It's just a little different right now.
Johnny, you mentioned that some of the people that you still talk with, one person still over at like Noma. I mean, you're in, a densely populated area in DC, but for some of these restaurants that really rely on that like tourism, I mean, there's places all over the world that are like, Michelin restaurants and stuff like that. I mean, I always try to identify the problem so you can try to figure out, okay, how do we solve that? But I mean, have you talked to people out there? Like, what are they thinking? Like,
I mean,
what do you do?
I haven't really talked to, I keep in touch with like some people out there in Copenhagen right now, and we've talked a little bit of like what they're doing now, but not so much about what their future is. But even just like stateside, like you have a lot of restaurants that have opened up outside of like a metropolis, right? Like you have like None Such in Oklahoma City, which, it's a small, counter only, I think it's like 16 seats, but it's in the middle of Oklahoma City, and they're doing like some of the best food in the country, but they're relying on travel and tourism and people coming in just to eat at that restaurant. So like, how do you anticipate and change that? Like if you're not in New York or Chicago or something that's like, at least DC's definitely more heavily populated than like a small rural city, but how do you anticipate like not like we just missed like one of the biggest tourist seasons in DC, which is like the Cherry Blossom Festival.
Yeah, right. Totally.
So how do you rely on the guests that you already have that are local? Like, is there, not to say like they're not the ones that you might have catered to before, but do you have to change like who you are as a restaurant or like your message too, to like get people that are maybe not, might just think you're some like weird avant-garde restaurant? Because I think that's the reason why we kind of do what we do, is like we have a burger because we want people to realize that although we do some like kind of, you know, fun and maybe what some people would consider to be different, like we're still a restaurant that serves food. So you just got to get like people comfortable with the idea of like, I don't know, I always thought it was kind of weird, like to put a $100 tasting menu on a restaurant here in DC. It's not that, it shouldn't sound that weird considering like if like people in DC are willing to travel to like Spain and Paris and do the same thing. But there's something like, why would I do that in the city that I live in? So we have to change like what we're doing is the same. And we're like, we look as the globally, like that's the culinary platform that we're standing on. We're not like trying to be the best, you know, fine dining restaurant in Georgetown. Like we're looking at every restaurant in the world and like trying to live up to those expectations. Like how do we get guests in DC that are like, will travel to Barcelona and eat these restaurants or go to Paris and do all this, but like, you know, you have this in your backyard. Like,
right. It's like right there. Right.
So, I mean, it's the voice of the restaurant, which I think is like the hardest thing to figure out. Like, how do you showcase that and like put that on your website and in your menu so people know like, hey, like we're not this wild cutting edge El Bulli style restaurant. We do fun stuff, but you can come eat here without having to travel across the world to do that. So I think it's trying to get the city behind us. It's not to say they're not, but I think there's definitely like an untapped market of people that probably have no idea who I am, which is true. Like it's not everybody is looking for, you know, a tasting menu experience in DC when they go on vacation, maybe so, but like, how do we get those people to realize that, okay, so maybe you're not going to be traveling to London this year, so come eat here. Well, we can do something just as special, or you can also just have a burger and a cocktail. Like there's just got to kind of, it's hard for me to like always put into words as any chef, because we write menus that are kind of vague because I like to change things up a little bit and we draw out plates, but like an elevator pitch for us to like take out a lot of the emotion, but because we can't just explain to everybody what we do. Like I couldn't sit there and have an hour-long conversation, explain like the passion behind everything that we do here. It's like, how do I grab you in like 2 sentences or less so you understand what I am? That's the one thing that I will forever struggle with, because even now people ask me what my restaurant is, and I was like, fuck if I know. It's we say modern American because that's like the easiest, most broad range of anything, but everyone's like, so are you Spanish? Are you New Nordic? I'm like, no, we're Reverie. Like we are who we are. And sometimes that's not enough for people to really like grab onto. Like they want to know, oh, it's Italian food, it's seafood, it's Greek, it's Mediterranean, it is what it is. So I think looking in our, maybe not trying to feel like, look at all the guests that are going to be coming in from like outside. Because like we would always get hit with so much tourists, and like DC is we definitely have like it is like an international hub. There's definitely a lot of people that travel, and they'll see some article, or like we've been in some like airline magazines for some reason, like some Scandinavian stuff, but they'll find us through that. So if we eliminate that source of like guest, like how do we not change who we are, but to change the message so people know like, hey, you can come here and get more than just like a burger all the time. So I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, I like how you have the menu, even just looking at having a duck or a lamb shoulder, a burger. So, you know, somebody may look at a menu item like that. And like you said, you know, with the lady that came in and got the burger, and you kind of like lure her in, but you're still, you know, your signature, your touch, your style is still on even something as typical as a burger. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I say that thing is like the best and the worst thing I've ever done. You can ask, I feel like I should just have Seamus sit next to me one of these days when I do this stuff and just talk about like how crazy we've gotten about like the smashing of it, like the scraping of the burger. Like, we're very particular about like, how we cook everything here, but I'll sit there and just watch somebody smash a burger. I was like, no, it's not right.
Yeah.
And it's something that should be like so simple, but I think that's also why, because the expectation of like a burger should be like, oh, it's a burger, it should be good. So if like we fall flat on that, like we've lost somebody, like they're never going to trust us to do like a multi-course tasting menu or like eat gooey duck. They're like, you can't even cook a burger. Why do we trust that guy?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, this has been a great talk so far, because it really showcases how, as an industry and as a chef, we always push forward. We always change with the situation. And that kind of brings me to my question. Where do you see the strengths from this pandemic showcasing and shining going forward in restaurants? You talked about your business is bobbed and weaved, selling burgers and takeaway, and you plan on doing that going forward. But there's also, the labor issue. You touched upon some guys are not going to want to come back. They're going to be too scared to come back, or they're maybe find a different career during this time, or something else happens. The same thing with diners. So how do we adjust for that? Do we become, does fine dining, avant-garde food become this trying to please everybody to see what sticks and then going forward with that? Or do we kind of change how the avant-garde restaurant is showcased in the public eye?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obviously like the restaurant industry got hit incredibly hard, but I think one of the coolest things to see is how fast all of us pivoted to do like whatever we decided to do. Like Justin Carlisle from Ardent is like just crushing through ramen boxes right now.
They look so good.
Yeah. And like, John Shields was doing like banh mi sets, like he's doing his burger. Like you look at all these chefs. I mean, Alinea, who had just like had like its 15-year anniversary, and it's probably like one of the most influential restaurants in the world, was doing carry out for like a couple hundred people a day. Like I think it hit us hard, but looking how fast we all recoiled back and made that change, like that just shows like moving forward that, I mean, not to say you could throw anything at us, but you could try. We'll try to pivot into some direction that makes sense, and without having to compromise our integrity. Like we didn't want to change who we were and start doing like just not to say cheap meals, but food that wouldn't be satisfying to people just to put food on a plate. Like we still want the experience. And I think any restaurant, you still want it to be like a really positive experience, because no matter what, like that's going to be a representation of your restaurant. Like even if you go on, like I guarantee if you look on Instagram and look at like some pictures that people have tagged Reverie in, it's going to be the stuff they're eating at their house, like plated, and they're going to do their own thing. So if we can like making sure that anything that ever comes out of this kitchen, like if I wouldn't serve it normally, then why would I do it to go? if I'm not satisfied with it, I'm like, yeah, it might be a little different. Like it's not changing standards, but again, it's pivoting to make it more approachable. And if that means, it doesn't mean we have to change like what we're cooking. I think maybe we change like the message a little bit. I mean, it's all about how you sell it, right? Like you just gotta think about the wording, we didn't change anything about our burger, anything about our duck. Like we serve half a duck now. So there's something appealing about being able to get a half a duck versus a whole duck, where people are like, okay, yeah, we can do that. We can swing that. So it's not like we're salesmen, but it's learning what the guests need to hear in order for them to enjoy what you're doing. So I think that's what it is too. Like I don't try to be this like wildly avant-garde artistic guy. Like I'm wearing a bunch of Carhartt and shitty torn up jeans and hiking boots right now. Like I'm a regular guy, and I like to cook really good food. And I think like bringing people in and letting them know that it's any restaurant for that matter, is not like, doesn't need to be pretentious or this like over the top, like uncomfortable place to go eat. Like seeing how we've all been affected by this, like I think it's definitely brought out like a lot more of like the humanity in humans. Like you've seen it a little bit more. So it's not like we're stripping away like this facade that we're above anybody else. But I think it's just what we do is we cook food, and some of us cook food differently. But I think how we put that onto a plate and put it into words is definitely going to change a little bit more. Like we want people to feel welcome, and maybe we don't need to list every weird fermentation thing that we put on our menu or anything like this. Like just build it so we know that people know enough and they want to come eat it. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be like we think about how we scale back our descriptions. Like maybe we don't need to tell everybody every single little thing that goes into it. Like the burger, we tell them it's ribeye and this and that. Like we don't tell them that it's like a 2-day process to make the special sauce, because we like slow cook the eggs and then we smoke them for like 4 hours. Like you figure out like what people need to hear, and then if they want to have that conversation more, then you can have it. But just like building like this like I keep talking about the elevator pitch, but I think that's going to change how some restaurants describe themselves. It's like you want people to feel comfortable coming in, so you just maybe change some of the wording that you say. Like I don't know, sometimes like a grand tasting menu versus like a prefix. Like just the wording of that sounds a little bit different. It doesn't mean we change who we are. It's just like, okay, let's reapply it to make sense now, so people can justify, coming here and spending the money and they understand what they're getting. So yeah, it's the one thing that I've always struggled with is like wording. I'm so vague on my menus because I was like, well, shit, I don't want to describe everything, but it gives you just enough, but it also leaves like that door open if people want to like say, hey, like what is all the rest of this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, great. I'll talk to you for 3 hours about how we made that. So
Johnny, you run into any problems with like supply chain with any products or, I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we hit that a little bit in the beginning. Like we, one of the reasons why I'm really glad that we stayed open is because we were able to still generate revenue, although not comparatively to what we were doing was down. But I also took like a massive pay cut, which again, like whatever it takes, like I want to make sure I can buy groceries for my family, but it's making sure that we can still pay our farmers because we bought product from them. And like, most of the guys are net 30 and you bought all this stuff expecting to stay open. Like they're hurting just as much as we are. So we were able to pay some of them off, like pay some of our bills to some of our farmers and things like that. But some of the guys that were delivering from, Maryland or Virginia, like they slowed down their delivery, or like our meat purveyor, they delivered 3 days a week versus 5. So, we definitely we didn't change we changed how many things we were offering based on what we could get. But we just saw like flour was hard to get for a little bit. So we had to change the way that we used to do like this dark Danish rye bread. And it was like a 2-day process just to get it baked. But because we were so unsure if we were going to get flour that day, that if we did get flour, we changed it to like, we had a starter, we would make focaccia because it was a less time. So basically we had to adapt to the availability of certain things. Like we would get shorted on stuff all the time. It's just like, yeah, we just don't have access to that right now. But like we were like, we can still get the beef that we use. We can still get the ducks. We're like, okay, so maybe we shouldn't we don't need to change anything. And because we know that we can consistently get these. And like the farmer made sure, he's like, are you consistently going to buy however many cases of duck every single week? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, we're going to try. He's like, okay, well then we'll keep selling them. But it's definitely changed a little bit as far as how we order stuff. Like we plan like 2 days ahead for ordering, just because we don't know like there's so many different variables. Like maybe the farm couldn't get as much beef that day, so they can only give us, instead of getting the ribeye in that we let sit for a little bit, we can only get the chuck roll that day. We're like, okay, so maybe 2 days from now we can get it just changed our schedule on how we normally operate. But I think that's kind of why we do the food that we do right now. Like it's not necessarily simple by any means, but we know that these are the ingredients that we can consistently get. But we've seen it change, like drivers, depending on the demand that day. Like we get to the restaurant every day normally at like 7, and it's changed now because most drivers, because there's so little orders, I think it's increased a lot. But when we first started, like they weren't coming until noon because like they're like, there's 3 orders. We're not going to drive here at like 7 a.m. to like drop stuff off to you. There's no sense. Like it's like, and I know we had a new delivery driver like every single day, and we're down an alleyway. So to find us, it takes them so long. So like once the one guy figures out where we are, or like we're like golden, he knows to come to us before he goes to the hotel, because we're like a 5-minute drop versus 3 hours. But the new guy who's just following his route doesn't know the difference. Right. So like if we need to plan to have meat in the restaurant by 8 to break it down to grind it so it's ready, and we're not getting it till 3 p.m, and we start producing at 5, like we've kind of had to like, again, swivel a little bit and figure out how we do that. But I mean, luckily we can still get we have one purveyor that we get all of our meat from, and they've been really good about staying open and keeping things going and keeping things moving. And again, like we do ribeye, chuck roll, and ducks. So unless for some reason they stop getting that, then we'll change. Like there was one day we had to use brisket instead of chuck roll because they were shorted. So it's adapting and knowing that things are going to change every single day. But it's gotten a lot better over the past couple of weeks, especially. So we're not seeing like too many drastic changes. But yeah, like I was saying, those farmers before who used to deliver to us, they're not coming to DC anymore because it's too far out of the way.
Right.
So they've scaled down. They moved into like, we do delivery, they do CSAs. So they're trying to find a way to stay afloat because they went from having 80 restaurants in DC buy for them to nobody.
Yeah, right. It's crazy.
Even if it's like 2 of us, they're like, why are we going to drive from Baltimore to drop this off to you? They're like, we love you, but they're like, it doesn't make any sense financially. I was like, yeah, I don't want you to lose money so I can make a salad for a to-go box. Like, don't do that to yourself.
Right.
But we've already started talking to everybody again about, the expectation of like when they're going to start coming back. we're kind of reverse engineering off of like a date that was kind of like May 14th, but we're looking a little bit differently. But everyone's looking to start coming back regularly to DC over the next couple of weeks. But it's like we're waiting to like pull that trigger and like flip that switch. Like, okay, let's 100% do this. So it's been again, like we went from ordering from a couple different people to like literally 2. So that's what supplies the restaurant right now. So ordering's really easy for me right now because I literally just text 2 people and that's it. But I will say, like, we still keep in contact with a lot of our farmers just to like check in and see what's going on and how they're doing and how they pivoted in this too. Cause it's interesting. Like they went from growing like edible flowers and, you know, beautiful greens to like heads of lettuce because they needed to fill a CSA box, which is not what they built their systems for. So it's been interesting to talk to them and how they're surviving too.
Well, I know we're getting close here on coming up on 45 minutes, and I know I appreciate your time. I did have my last question.
Sure.
Was what would be your suggestion for a binge-worthy show on Netflix?
I will say I binged Ozark.
Yeah.
I never watched it before. I don't watch a ton of stuff. By the time I get home, like I'll try to watch something, but I crushed through those with my wife. I also liked Altered Carbon a lot.
Okay.
So, but
Check
Ozark, yeah, I would say go for Ozark.
I'm stuck on Trailer Park Boys again.
I need to rewatch that through. I'm like, yeah.
I'm so glad you didn't say Tiger King.
Oh man, no. I mean, I watched that with my wife too. It was wild, but I found more enjoyment out of Ozark than that.
Yeah. Hey man, go ahead, Dustin. You had something?
Yeah, one thing. I mean, just to close out. So, where do you see the limitations taking you? I mean, we're going to have unforeseen limitations. We've learned to pivot during this period. Now, moving forward, where do you see it taking you as a whole?
I mean,
because the fine dining scene is going to change no matter what, and there's nothing we can do about that for at least a year or two.
Yeah.
The restrictions on people in the restaurant. I mean, it's going to be a big impact. So, where do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the way that a lot of us have made those changes to do like did you go and carry out, but we're going to see a lot of restaurants kind of continue to do that. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, my hope is that we're going to be able to kind of do these prefix menus to give people options, and that's going to like push us to be the restaurant that we want to be. But we also don't want to like alienate anybody either. I don't know. I think it's hard to say. Like we kind of have a plan and we're going to kind of run with it and see what happens. But I think, still being who we are and pushing forward and not, I don't want to like dumb anything down and like lessen the experience. Like people are going to be excited to get back out and like support us. And we're excited to see other people. Like it's been me and my 2 cooks, and I'm sure they're tired of seeing me. Like we want those people to come in and like be super excited and have a good time. So anything that we can do not to compromise and kind of give the experience. Actually, I don't want to give the same experience that we did before. I want it to be better. Like I want people to like come in and be like, oh shit, like you guys are like firing like harder than you ever were, and keep it going. So it's going to be hard. There's going to be limitations. Like you said, like staff might be hard, guests might be hard, but I feel like the only way that we have a chance of getting through this is like just keeping our head down and working hard. And then again, like we've seen how quickly we all pivoted during this. Like if we have to pivot again, we'll make that pivot. I just know that like we can survive being a burger restaurant. Like that is just not, there's no, I mean, I'll open a burger shack if I need to do that. But like this restaurant in particular was not built to be that. And it's worked great as that during right now, because it gives us something to do. And it definitely brings in a lot of our regulars, but we know moving forward that it's not sustainable. And the only way that we can sustain this concept is to be the concept that we opened. And if it doesn't work, like, I don't know, like we're just going to, not to say I haven't thought about that, but it's, we're just going to keep staying positive and like just running through what we need to do, like whatever it takes kind of thing. Like I'm here every morning, 7 a.m. I'll stay to the bitter end just to make sure that we're doing it. But we don't really have another choice, right? Like I can't just like I can't turn this into a burger restaurant. It's too fancy. It'd be like, so yeah, I want to keep on track. And again, we'll kind of zigzag where we need, but we'll kind of let the world kind of dictate that. And again, I've seen how fast we've all changed and turned. So we'll just keep doing that.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, Johnny, we support you, and anything you got coming up, any initiatives, your team, your family, we wish you the best, and whatever we can do to support you with anything, we encourage everybody to go and get one of those burgers to start off and then come back for a duck. But thank you, man, so much. And we wish you the best. And we will look forward to staying in touch with you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks
Thank you very much, Chef.
Thank you for letting me ramble on.